Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Shay Ryan Douglas here from Earth Heroes TV, the independent conscious media platform, and I'm with Todd Jarratt. Exciting conversation we're going to have today, all about identity and the impact our identity has on our lives, our relationships, our friends, and our family. But before we get into Todd Jarratt's signature model for changing the world, I'm really interested to learn a little bit more about the background of Todd Jarratt. We did have a catch up on Sunday at Todd's place down by the beach and had a great conversation to dive deeper into, what it is that makes us who we are and why we are the way we are. And I got to learn a little bit of Todd's background, which is quite phenomenal, in fact. It was really cool afternoon where we got to share some great stories on all accounts from all people involved. But before we jump into hearing a little bit more about Todd's background, I just wanted to thank you guys for listening. If you're listening or watching, if you want to just like this video, give us a comment and feel free to share this with your friends if you got value out of it. But Todd, I just want to thank you for being alive, brother, and thanks for sharing your time, most valuable resource, and jumping on and having the conversation with me. I really look forward to how we can, just serve the listeners and share some great stories. I know you got plenty of those, but appreciate you taking the time to join me, man.
Thank you very much, Legend. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, and I'm excited to be here and share something that's unique and very special that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So on our chat on Sunday, you kind of expressed, you'd had quite a unique upbringing growing up in Australia, sort of in a country town, and then had some big shifts throughout your life that have kind of shifted your trajectory and what you're doing. What would you say has been, just looking back at your recent history, has been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your life? But I was inspired to hear you not being a victim of those challenges, but using them for your purpose, what you're doing now. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more on that story, on what has been a catalyst for change for you in your life.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest catalyst for change, really the biggest turning point and pivot point in my life to this part and this portion, was in September of 2019, when I was in and out of hospital for around 2 years before that. But it got to the point where the doctors and surgeons told me on a speakerphone call that my mum was on speakerphone at the time, and they walked into the room that I was in and said that I had 24 to 48 hours to live if things didn't go well. And that was the background to that. Was I had an autoimmune condition, is the medical diagnosis, where it was attacking my large intestine. Some people would know that as ulcerative colitis. I don't identify with the label anymore because of understanding identity and attachment to labels. But it was in that time in hospital that when I heard those words, my whole life's path, purpose, and journey before that fell away. The reason that I was so unwell was because I had worked so hard to achieve, to create, what we would call in society as success at a young age. And I'd worked with that conviction and that commitment. And then when they told me that I was potentially about to lose my life, that's, for me, when you hear those stories of people who've had a near-death experience, they've had those moments where their whole life's perspective shift. That's what happened for me. And that's when I started to take my science background in training athletes or working with athletes and consulting around the globe and teaching at university in physiology, and wanting to look more inwardly, more, I guess you would say, spiritually, energetically, at what was causing this. And that period of time was absolutely the biggest shift point. And there's been points and experiences since. I know I mentioned on Sunday that there was a period of 2 weeks around 5 months after that where my body was actually getting worse and shutting down. And that was another one of those points where I was able to have a reflection on life or death every day for 2 weeks by myself, because I wasn't around. My family wasn't around because of the issues going down with lockdowns and border control and things like that. And there was just a whole lot of time, really, the next 2 years for me was introspection. So I'd say that's the shift point for sure.
Yeah, cool, man. Thanks for sharing just a part of your story there, just giving us a snapshot of it. I'm really curious to dive deep into this, you know, perspective of success. Like you had mentioned before, having this kind of life-changing experience. You were on a, you know, deemed as successful, going off and doing amazing things for people, working really hard, you know, taking you across the world, serving at a really high level with professional athletes and whatnot. And in our culture, we would definitely deem that, you know, a successful achievement, right? And then I'm curious how you perceive it now and what your definition of success is, having gone through that experience and the lessons that you've learned, what you would term success and how you would define it.
The first feeling that arose in my body just then, as being fully present with your words, was, how do I look back on myself from then? And what came up was like, I feel sorry for my old self. And the reason I say that is because I was working so hard, pushing myself so much in the state and mode of doing to achieve from a place of lack. I was doing it to fill a void of pain and to fill a void of not feeling enough or not being worthy. And so I look back and I see all of those years of all of the beauty that I did create, unfortunately, came from a lack of internal fulfillment. So I have I live now by, there is external achievement and there is internal fulfillment. And I would always, from what's happened now, choose internal fulfillment, because as we know, there are millionaires and some billionaires around the world that take their lives. And then we have people that have little to nothing, whether they're in a third world country or they're a practicing monk. And they are some of the happiest beings you will come across. And it's this internal shift. So for me, I used to perceive and value success as a social status, as a position, as a ranking, being the best performance coach, having the world champion athletes, having the gold medalist Olympians. That was my form of qualifying success. Now qualifying success for myself is, how fulfilled is oneself? How much do they need outside of themselves to feel joy, to feel happiness? And when they don't need anything outside of themselves, that's to me now what I guess I would call success. And I know that, Tony Robbins' famous quote is, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I guess I conceptually got that, intellectually got it when I heard it, back in the day, having done the courses and programs and everything. And it wasn't until this shift occurred in my life that I really embodied the feeling of it, and I experienced it and had the realization. And so then my journey became, okay, if I've gone the complete wrong direction and I've had the success without the fulfillment, so now technically I'm the ultimate failure in a sense, in a lighthearted kind of a way. Now I can look back. How do I reverse engineer that? And so if success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, then by virtue of that formula, fulfillment without success is the ultimate experience. And so what I live my life to be now is in a state of fulfillment first. And that comes from internal, and external success or external achievement is the cherry on top. That is, the bonus in life.
That's awesome, man. So inspiring to hear. And it seems, the more people I talk to, I love having this conversation, especially discussing those like catalyzing moments and the experiences that really shake our worlds. Because my story is not that different to yours, where it took me to go to the extreme edges of pain and suffering after receiving, third knee reconstruction, and my whole sportsman fantasy ideal dream that I was attempting to become had been completely shattered. And at that point, I was really lost, because this whole identity that I was playing up to and performing, and had this kind of facade and mask of on the external environment, came crumbling down. And the inner world, the inner truth of what I was feeling began to be revealed. And that was very emotional. It looked like a lot of tears, a lot of pain. And I'm curious to dive deeper into this concept of identity that you've created, this beautiful model, having done a lot of the work with a variety of different diverse teachers and scientists and experts in their field. Like you mentioned Tony Robbins already. You're working with the guys from Cool to Be Conscious, as well as Dr. Espen. Really curious, because it seems that from what I've externally observed and what you're sharing, is that has a lot to do with the mind and the subconscious mind and the beliefs. But what is it about our identity that becomes such a stronghold into who we are, and more importantly, how we are in the world?
Yes, as you're saying this, I can feel the energy building in my body, and that's because I know that this is so potent and so powerful. So the first thing to mention here is that I am not the creator of identity. I've just created a system for it. If you look back through, some of the, as they call them, the godfathers of personal development, Maxwell Waltz in the book Psycho-Cybernetics talks about the self-image. And self-image is a form of our identity, how we view ourself. And that's an incredible book. And I know Bob Proctor speaks about it. And I also know that in this way, Tony, when we're as an example, we were at Date with Destiny, and Tony was talking about identity as well. And a whole host of other coaches and mentors that I'd been to had taught about identity as a principle and as about a level of our mind that is the key. And they would say things along the lines of, identity is the most leveraging aspect of the human mind, or identity creates the most shift in the human experience. And I kept hearing these terms around, and this was after I'd created the identity system, that they would talk about identity being the absolute core, the what we would call the linchpin, the catalyst for deepest change in the subconscious mind. However, I uncovered through my own experience that no one had actually created a system to rewire the identity. We could talk about it, but when we really dig deeper into the subconscious mind and human behavior, I have an example that I use for people so that they really grasp this and they really get it. And that's that if we think of kind of like a target or gears, we know that the innermost gear, when it turns, all of the other outer gears by automation, by default, move as well. But if you only turn the outer gear, then only it rotates. So we know that the core is the biggest catalyst for overall change. So when I lost my health and my ability and my career, my friendships, my relationships, and really all aspects to myself, I'd been in the care of my parents for quite a few months, and I was down living in Victoria at the time and had no idea what was going on in my life and who I was. And this question I kept coming back to each day, and that was like, who am I? Who am I now? I'm not in my career. I don't have my friend circle. I don't live where I used to live. I don't have the relationships, the businesses, any of these things. All of the things that I'd worked toward had been stripped away. And I didn't have an answer for it at the time. And as I continued this introspective journey and what realizations, and I guess you would call downloads from post the second, the genuine near-death experience, was that in the human behavioral system, in the human experience, on these gears, on the outermost layer, so the most superficial, we have an action. So if I use the example right now, if we want to create health, so someone says, I want to get healthy, I want to get healthier. So an action, so they go action. I'm going to go for a run today. Beautiful, that's an action. That's the most outermost layer. They go for a run. But that's not going to create a lasting change. So underneath actions, we have what we would then term a habitual action or a behavior. So a behavior is something that's more repetitive. So that might be, I'm going to go for a run 3 times per week. So you can see that that's going to lead to more of a health-oriented outcome than just the action itself. So if your behavior changes, then by default, your action changes. But underneath your behavior, it is dictated by your beliefs. Now, if your desire is to have this action of going for a run, but your belief is that running is a waste of time, or that running hurts my knees, or that, running's painful, that belief is going to outweigh the desire to create a behavior or an action. So we can see that the behavior then becomes the fault point in the change. And so we may then work to, as most coaches, if you work in the space of psychology or psychotherapy or mindset in this whole space, most coaches in the world work at the level of beliefs, limiting beliefs and empowering beliefs. The issue here is that we have global beliefs and we have rules, which are 2 different forms of beliefs, and they go internally and externally. And so we have an endless amount of beliefs. I can say, think of the color blue, you'll give me a belief. I'll say, think of health, you'll give me a belief. It is so subjectively based, and there are so many that when you've done the work, which I had done at this point in my life, had done so much work on my limiting beliefs, my empowering beliefs, all of these different forms, that it was almost like this endless cycle. And I know so many people that have been on the personal development journey for many years, and I'd say those that will be watching this video will be on that page, that we move through one belief and then it's like, oh, there's the next one. And we move through that and then there's the next one. And it's this endless journey. And so I realized that obviously there's beliefs, which we've done the work on. And then underneath beliefs, let's say we have a belief around running. Then we have a belief around, weightlifting. We have a belief around certain types of training. We have a belief around food. These primarily fall into the category of health. So underneath our beliefs, we have our values. So now when you go and do, as an example, Date with Destiny with Tony, or you do the Breakthrough Experience with Dr. John Demartini, you work in this way, these coaches then go to the level of values. And we have our kind of like our primary values. So really what happens is all of our beliefs, our endless amount, let's say there's, as a conservative number right now, I can think of there's tens of thousands, they get put into buckets. And those beliefs buckets are our values. So health is a bucket, work is a bucket, and all of the beliefs around work go into there. And so we have our values. Now, the example here is that if we're taking the idea of the action, the behavior, the belief, and now the value, if we don't have health as one of our primary values, and let's say it's 30th on our list of values, and all of these other things come first, we're not going to prioritize our health. So that means that the run won't occur just because we don't value it. So despite the belief that running will help me potentially, or that this will be good as a behavior to do it a couple times a week, or I'll just go do it today, if you don't value it, it won't actually occur. So we see that values then become the linchpin area. However, what I realized through what occurred with my health and everything being stripped away from me, which I now know happened for me because I was able to go deeper into the human psyche and introspection than many coaches in the world are I guess, unfortunate to, in the way it's like people would say it's unfortunate to go through that. But I can see that it is a gift because I've been able to go deeper. Was I realized that I consciously have done no work to change my actions, my behaviors, my beliefs, or my values. And when I went through and I reflected upon my values hadn't actually changed from pre all the hospitalizations and the subsequent two, and one legitimate, really deep near-death experience. Nothing had shifted. And so when I kept coming back to this question of who am I? Like, what am I now other than my name and this flesh? Like, what is there? I realized there has to be something underneath values, because my whole life, my whole perspective can't have changed so radically without there being something underneath, because it's a root cause. And my life's work is root cause work. And that's obviously also how I've been able to heal my body from near death without any medication at all, has been through going to the root cause. And so I just kept pondering this. And what I eventually realized was that I'd been asking myself the question all along without the light bulb: who am I? And so it was in those moments, I still remember it clear as day. I was in the what we call the runaround room at my parents' home down in Bendigo in Victoria. And because during this, around year of time where I was just healing, all I was doing was breath work, meditation, and journaling, and some reading each day. So it was a lot of introspective time, which was a blessing. I had this particular day where when I asked myself that question in the morning, it hit me. And it was this moment of identity that is deeper than values. And so as I started to then go, I went and reread the books and went through the parts of seminars that I'd written notes on identity before. And I was like, this makes sense. Identity is the deepest part. It is the who am I? Because in society and in this day and age, we have a belief that what I do creates who I am. If I go for a run, it makes me a healthy person. If I eat this food, it means, I am this. If I do this to my partner in a relationship, I am this. However, when we really go to the deepest aspects of the subconscious and the root that actually caused the little fires and the triggers, the triggers to be pulled, it's actually the identity. If I perceive myself that I am this, I then have the values of this person, the beliefs, thus the behaviors and the actions. And so it's the rippling effect from the deepest point of the identity. And so for me, it was actually a selfish process to begin with, where, as I said, I'd worked so hard to create this external achievement, I'd lost it all. I realized I had little to no internal fulfillment. And as a result, I was really scared initially to die. And then I started doing more internal work and was able to accept that and come to terms with it. And so when I was in this point where there was really nothing to, as I said just before, nothing to my identity, other than I'm living in the care of my parents right now because I can't do anything to look after myself, and there's nothing else to me. If I have a second chance at life, and I've done all of this work beforehand to create achievement, and I got to this point at 24 where I nearly died, for what point? And so it was this reflection of, all I want to do is create fulfillment for myself. However, I also know that I've gone through what I've gone through for a reason. It has happened for me. And so I knew that there was a part inside of me that was still here to serve and to impact lives positively. And that's why I wouldn't go and live and ordain as a monk. That was my pull, because from this point in time, I'd gone and sat multiple Vipassana courses and had been going more internally, that I had that pull. But I knew that there was something that I needed to do. And so what I set about creating was a system for myself to recreate my identity, to first be focused on fulfillment, secondly, to be focused on impact. And so I selfishly started pulling in tools and methods from different teachers and masters from around the world, and created a structure and a system for myself to implement, so that as I rebuilt my life from the ground up, I set my objectives and what I wanted to live in the day-to-day, what I wanted to feel first and foremost. No matter what I achieve in the day, I feel this. That's first and foremost. But then secondly, what I do from that place. So who I am first creates the what I do. And so I created this system which is set out specifically so that there are no gaps, as I would say. The analogy I give to people is in the personal development space, in the life transformation space, in the achievement space. When we go and see coaches or seminars or courses and programs, imagine we have a river that's 100 meters wide. What we typically have is, imagine then we have like the lily, the lily ponds, the lily pads, I should say, like that we can step across the river, or the stepping stones. And typically we start out and there's 5 to 10 of them within a couple of meters. And then as we get further along, they kind of become more spaced out to the point it's like 5 meters from one stone to the next, then to 10. So what happens is you've made all of it, you're making this progress to begin with. And then it's like, I've got to make this massive jump and there's a gap and you miss. And that's when the journey stops. And then, some person might make that jump across the 3 meters, but then they get to the 5 and they miss that, and vice versa. And few, if any, people in the world truly create the life that they desire, not because they don't consciously want it, but because their subconscious, their identity isn't created and consciously directed towards that being cultivated with a step-by-step process that if you solely follow the steps, you will get there. And that was, for me, the big challenge that I realized in the personal development space was that we all set out objectives, we all set out goals, but very few people get there. And it's not from a lack of trying, but it's from a lack of systems, from a lack of having it so simple and so easy to follow that it's done for you. And that's what I went to do, to set out for myself. And I was really blessed to create that. And from that experience, have had clients come to me, and whether that be, professional athletes that were, top in the world championship at 20 years of age, about to retire altogether because they couldn't even qualify into their races anymore, within 3 months, having taken them from nearly being retired and being injured to being back to second in the world in 3 months. Whether it was taking someone that had been an employee within businesses for 5 to 7 years prior, and they wanted to launch companies. Within 3 months of doing the work, they went from where they were as an employee wanting to having launched 4 businesses that all went to multi-million dollars within 3 months, which was incredible. As another example, we took he's a dear friend of mine. He was a T11, T12 paraplegic, and from a motorcycling accident. And that was a permanent paraplegia. He hadn't had any progress in his state for 3 years or 3.5 years. And they were nearly going to chop off one of his legs because it just became a dead weight. We did nothing but subconscious work with the identity and some breath work. Within 2.5 months of us doing the work, he was able to get up and walk with those legs with the braces. He's able to ride push bikes. He had no progress. We did no physical therapy at all. And this is purely because when that subconscious at the deepest part starts to shift, the identity starts to shift, then all of the steps above it follow in suit. And so I know that I'm a living example of the implementation of it, and knowing where I was 1.5 to 2 years ago to where I get to be today is a living proof of that. But also the incredible beings that I've been able to work with is just showing that this identity and identity system needs to be shared with the world 100%.
That's amazing, man. Thank you so much for sharing. Super inspiring. And for those who are watching in or listening in, just want to give Todd a shout out on his social medias if you feel. And I'm curious, because we're only getting a snapshot here. Todd's just sharing how powerful this system is with the examples of the success. I mean, how he's implemented it in his own life. And I just want to encourage you to go and check out what Todd's doing more, you can go to his Instagram, Todd_Jarratt, or even the Facebook group Identity Tribe with Todd Jarratt. Go and check it out, guys, and and learn a little bit more, because what you're sharing, Todd, is so valuable and so important. And it's crazy that it takes us, these really extreme cases and situations to kind of wake us up, let's say. And for some, it's more emotional, others it's physical. And then even for some people that I've spoken to, it's a spiritual element that brings them to a moment of awakening and change and transformation. I love this kind of movement, and I can foresee that in your life, particularly being young like myself, you've got a lot of potential for this to really have a big impact on the world, and that's really exciting. But I guess my curiosity lies in the process and the steps and the conversation to enable these kinds of systems and these programs to be implemented in schools. Because I remember sitting there and doing Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny, and it was almost like, why did I never learn this at school? It was like, why did they never teach us this at an early age, particularly the personal development stuff and what you're sharing around the identity? Kids are a lot more intelligent than I feel we give them credit for. Like, for example, it's no wonder that I remember being in grade 11 and half of the men have kind of dropped out of school because we have to still put our hands up to see if we can go to the toilet. So no wonder they're dropping out so early. But I guess what I'm curious about is like, and my question for you, is, particularly with this system and this model being birthed at this ripe time for humanity, what's the big vision for this and for your life, and where do you want to take it? You're obviously doing a lot of work with some really big movers and shakers here in Australia and on the southern hemisphere. So what's to come forward visioning for Todd Jarratt and the Identity Tribe?
I know that this is, for me, a legacy to leave. I know it's something that I want to pass on that lives well beyond my life, because I know that this life is finite, and I know that eventually we are all, in essence, forgotten, and that I want my time on here to be invested so that it is positively impacting those to come, so that they can live a more fulfilled life, so that they don't need to go through the same challenges. And so for me, what that looks like in terms of manifesting, creating that vision, is very simply, first and foremost, is I've been working on the identity system, fine-tuning it and adjusting it over the last roughly 2 years with my clients. So we're about to take that into a group coaching platform, so I can reach people all over the globe in a group environment. And once those beings have been through the intake and they've experienced the system, they've lived it, they've embodied it, they've felt the transformation that myself and my clients have. Because I know that if you just follow the steps, like building, I say to people, it's a Lego, it's like an instruction manual for the Lego. If you just follow the steps, you will get the outcome. And so once they've been through it and they've had those results, so that they live in that embodied place of integrity and conviction, then they're going to want to share it with others, because they know how it's helped them. Because deep down to our human core, we all long to help others. And so knowing that that will be the case, they will then become, apply to become an identity coach. And from there, they can teach, coach, facilitate using the system. And within that, they can impact people, and those impacted will then want to become coaches, and then they can impact more people. So it is the ripple effect of the system to know that, yeah, I might launch it in the first intake, but after that, I can step back, I disappear, and it's the identity system that makes the transformation. I don't want to be the key person of influence or the key person of leverage in that way, because I know that one person is not enough to impact the masses in that size and scale. I want it to go beyond that. So that's the mission, at least with the identity system. And I know that the other missions that I'm a part of right now, as you mentioned, with Cool to Be Conscious and Dr. Espen, it's, for me, it's aligning with missions that I believe in the integrity of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and serving them. So a part of that is supporting those missions as well, kind of left and right, but then having the identity system down the center.
Nice, man. That's so cool. Thanks for sharing that bigger picture vision. And I love it. You know, I love observing nature, and I love going outside and, you know, witnessing this miraculous, magical experience of life that we get to be a part of. And ultimately, everything is what I observe. Everything is operating in systems, right? We got the ecosystem, we got the star system, we got, you know, the bodily system, the nervous system. We look at our own self, all of these immune systems, and so on and so forth. So many examples that could go on, but ultimately, it's like these are the fundamental functions of energy. And if you can create an energy system of an identity that supports people to have, you know, personal growth, so they can become a better human being. I mean, wow, what an absolutely fulfilling mission to bring about, to create change in the world. Todd, I really appreciate you, man, and getting to know you more personally, more recently. And thanks for taking the time to join me on the podcast. We usually keep these to half an hour, but I feel like we could continue chatting all day, particularly about this system. I'm curious to know more. And what would your suggestion be for people to go and learn more? Where do they go? Is it the best to join the Facebook group, or?
For the moment, Instagram, just contacting me directly, as scrolling across there at Todd_Jarratt. That's the primary place for communication. Obviously, the groups and everything are growing, which is amazing, but that's where I can most easily be one-on-one in conversation and answer questions. And as I always say, if someone sends me a message, my intention is to be able to give them an audio back, to answer questions or to support or be of guidance. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you and everything that you're doing in the world. It's absolutely mission-oriented life and based. And I can really see you doing big things, man. So it's an absolute pleasure to know you. And thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for, you know, as it says, being an inspiring change maker, brother. It's, you know, we need more people like you in the world. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. I definitely feel it's our duty at this time, you know, and I really wanted just to honor in this moment all of those members who do support us through Earth Heroes TV. We are created by the people and specifically created for the people. So we are people powered in this membership based platform. And we just want to thank you for all of your kind contributions and support in the community that is so active and engaged, and enables us to be able to not just have these high quality conversations, but on the regenerative mission that we're on, we can action and put into place on the ground what's necessary to be part of this catalyzing transformational time in human history on this planet Earth. So it's an absolute pleasure to be able to have these conversations, and a big thank you to those who are watching. Again, if you want to give us a thumbs up, a comment, maybe even just share this video or this audio recording with some of your friends, would greatly appreciate that. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, Todd. Love it, man. I've got one last question for you. In one short sentence, what's your identity now?
Ooh, I like this. One short sentence would be a fulfilled, heart-led, mission-focused, conscious warrior.
I love it. So good, man. Conscious warriors all the way, brother. Love it. Chat to you soon, man. Thanks a lot.
Will do. Thank you, brother.